Hello, listeners. Been wondering how you can help the show? Probably not. But here are 5 things you can do. 1. Subscribe. Support the show by clicking the subscription link in the show notes. 2. Review on iTunes, on our website, www.afraidofnothingpodcast.com, or on whatever app you listen to. 3. Donate. When you go to our website, click the cute coffee cup icon. Or in the show notes, click the subscription link. 4. Share. Sharing really is caring. Tell your friends and even your enemies to check out the show. 5. Watch. Wait a minute, it's a podcast, not a movie. Actually, it's both. Check the show notes to find out where to watch the documentary. You can also rent it on Prime Video. That's it. Oh, one last thing. Enjoy this episode.
Good evening, mere mortals. This is the voice of God. Some of you stubborn humans don't believe in me. Well, tonight's show is the most stubbornest atheist of all. It took me 40 years to crack this nut, but thank God, thank me, he finally came along and saw the light. Tonight's episode, Ray Catania, the Atheist and the Afterlife.
In a world where nothing is known, nothing is certain, reality is not real. Wake up! Be afraid of nothing. I'm Bob Heskey.
Robert.
The host with the ghost.
This is my podcast, based on my paranormal documentary, Afraid of Nothing. Each episode, we talk to people who see life and the afterlife through a different lens. Join me.
Who is this large man? And what's he doing in our bedroom?
As we lift the veil and open our minds to see beyond our eyes lie. This is Afraid of Nothing.
Welcome, podcast listeners. We have a great guest today. His name is Ray Catania, and Ray is a metaphysical teacher, coach, and author who helps people achieve their full potential by combining scientific theories with their own life experiences. Ray's also written 2 great books, The Atheist and the Afterlife, and also You Are Still Alive, Now Act Like It. We are going to learn a lot today from Ray. Ray, welcome to the show.
Bob, thank you so much for having me here today. It is an honor and a privilege to be with you. Thank you.
I got to tell you, the privilege is all mine. I've heard you on several podcasts, and you have a great story.
Thank you.
If you don't mind, a very quick introduction about yourself, and then we'll roll into the 2 books that you've written and kind of what the findings are about them.
Sure. As you know, I began this journey in life as an atheist, and it was a series of events over a 40-year period that convinced me that there was more to life, or I should say more afterlife, and more to life as well, and that I needed to discover. And so I started down a path of learning as much as I could. But throughout that path, I got to say, there were some crazy ups and downs that just made it harder and harder to accept the fact that there was nothing and accept that there really was so much more. That's the basis of my story, learning that there's much more to this world than meets the eye and learning that there's more thereafter.
Yeah, I mean, you were not only an atheist, you were a very stubborn one. It did take you 40 years to fully embrace it. You've written 2 books. One is kind of like, the first part of your life, I think, and the second is the learnings where you share with people. So give us a quick glimpse of The Atheist and the Afterlife, what that is about, as well as You Are Still Alive, Now Act Like It. What can readers expect from each title?
The first book, The Atheist in the Afterlife, I call it my transition. And that is the story of how I went from atheism to being a believer in the afterlife and the series of events that occurred within. The second, however, You're Still Alive, Now Act Like It, I call it my transformation. And it's because during the writing of this book, I had my own spiritual awakening that was so profound. At the end of the book, I actually went back and rewrote the book because there was so much that I had come to realize at the end, and so much I had learned. I started connecting science to spirituality, and I saw how physics and metaphysics came together. And I really wanted to include that in the book because, listen, I'm my own biggest skeptic, and I get it. I know why people are skeptical. I understand better than anyone. So when I started to be able to put science with metaphysics together, that is the second book. So you can not only learn about these universal principles, but you can also see scientifically what I believe that they are derived from.
You know, Ray, one book, if you haven't checked it out yet, might be Biocentrism by Dr. Robert Lanza. It'd be interesting have you ever heard of that before?
I haven't, but I'll look into it.
Yeah, there's a series of 3 books, actually. There is an interesting take on that, using science and rather being the world being a happy accident that really consciousness and observation forms what happens around us in a series of the choices that we make. So
yeah,
that was a big part of my documentary. So that was very interesting.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a great summary, man. Regarding the first book, we're going to focus on kind of your transition first. I'd mentioned you were kind of stubborn. You tried to suppress a lot of this stuff. So let's talk about maybe one of the inciting incident of your awakening, which is your near-death experience in your youth, and how you kind of had that experience, but you suppressed it for a while.
Sure. So yeah, at the very beginning, I grew up in a Christian home. Unfortunately, it wasn't a very pleasant environment. And so I rebelled pretty much against everything that I was being taught for a combination of reasons. One was that, like I said, it was unhappy. There was a lot of fighting in my home, a lot of arguing, and a lot of chaos. And so what that caused me to do was isolate myself and stay away from what was happening in the house. I didn't want to be involved in these nightly fights that were occurring right in front of me. And I'm talking about being a small child now. I'm 5, 6, 7, 8 years of age, and I'm hiding in a closet or under the bed or in the basement or out in the yard. And it's just to escape what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing and what I'm feeling. And, I just couldn't believe that there was this loving God that's going to allow these things to occur. It didn't jive with me. So in these isolated events, it wasn't meditation, but keep in mind now, we had no cell phones yet. I didn't have a television. There were no electrical gadgets or games or anything for me to play with. So it's just me staring at a wall for hours and waiting for it to stop and go away so I can go to bed. It's this isolation that caused me to begin to see not just the wall, but kind of what the wall was made of. And I started to see energy. I started to see lines in the wall. I started to see that there was movement in the wall. I didn't think much of this as a child, but I acknowledged it as there's something more to everything that's around us. And I'll start to piece this together later. But for now, I point this out for a couple of reasons. One is because this is going to unfold into something much larger later. And because of that isolation and wanting to be away from what was happening, that was the reason for my rebellion from believing that anything, there's no God, there's nothing after life. It just ends. That's it. And so it's not until I'm 20 years old. That's when I had my NDE at the age of 20. And I'm still living in my parents' house at this time. And the kitchen is located directly under my bedroom. So I'm sleeping right above the stove on the second floor. What happens with this stove is there's a gas leak. And it must have been leaking all night long because the natural gas would rise and it would go into my room, and I was breathing it in while I was sleeping. No one really noticed this, including myself. I was asleep. So the next morning, my mother came down, and I suppose she turned on the stove to make breakfast or whatever. And there was a big burst of flames, and this instantly caught the wall on fire. It wasn't a big fire, and it wasn't the fire or the smoke that affected me. It was the gas that I was inhaling all night. The way I understand the story is my father was able to put the fire out very quickly, but they did call 911, and I hear the fire trucks and the police cars and everybody and all this commotion downstairs, and I don't know what's happening. I'm still, I'm just waking up. So I want to get up to see what's going on downstairs, and I find that most of my body is paralyzed. I can't move many of the parts of my body, such as my legs, for example. They felt like they weighed 1,000 pounds. And my head, I couldn't get it off the pillow. I couldn't yell. I couldn't yell for help. So I just knew something was very, very wrong, and I didn't know what it was yet, but I could use one arm, and I would pull myself to the edge of the bed, trying to get out of the bed. And I would pull somewhat. I'd make it a couple of inches. Then I'd have to do it again, and I might pass out, and I'd hear the commotion. It wakes me up, and I pull again. By the third time, I knew if I didn't get out of that bed, I was dead. There was no question. It was getting worse and worse. So I pulled with everything I had, and I tumbled out of the bed, and I fell face first down on the floor. This created a loud thump, which alerted everyone downstairs that I was upstairs. And as I hit the floor, this is what's interesting. I hit the floor. I knew I hit it, but I didn't feel any pain. So imagine taking this shot in the face, because you fall flat right on your face, or I did anyway. And the second I hit the floor, I feel it, but it's not painful. And that's because my body in that moment was dead. And I was in the corner of the room, a neutral corner. Imagine a square room. And I'm in the neutral corner looking down at myself and my lifeless body. I'm not scared, though. This actually feels great. It's very strange, but for some reason, I feel really good. And colors are more vivid. I can hear what people are saying. I mean, all my senses were so heightened. It was almost like going from like the old school black and white televisions to 4K,
the Wizard of Oz. You're in Oz.
Yeah. Just huge. It's just like, it's totally different. And in the direct diagonal corner from my energy now, my energy is what left my body, is a huge white light that's shining on me, only me. And this light comes with it a feeling of euphoria that I'm still trying to find words to describe how great this feels. It is everything positive you can think of. It's euphoric. It's love. It's compassion. It's a feeling of warmth. It's just this loving light with a feeling that all encompassed me. I became one with this light. Me and the light were one. And I wanted to proceed into the light. I wanted to go to the other side of that tunnel and see what was there. And there was a being at the end of the light who assured me, Ray, it's okay. Come into the light. I don't know who this person was. I don't know male or female. I don't know anything about who's saying this. And I'm not hearing it also. It's more telepathic. The information is just being given to me. And I proceed to go into the light. And as I go further in, the euphoria increases. And it's getting more and more wonderful, if that's possible, as I go into this tunnel. So in that moment, my father comes rushing into the room, because remember now I made this big thump. Everybody downstairs heard me, and my father comes running into the room, and, he scoops me up and starts screaming for the paramedics. And he's crying and he's distraught and he's showing emotion and he's hugging me. And this is a guy I didn't have a great relationship with. Probably hugged me like 5 times my whole life, and one of the 5 I'm dead. And I wanted that. I wanted that. You know what I mean? Like that's my father. I wanted to have that relationship with him, and I never did. And I was like, wow, you know, like he really does love me. And I wanted to go back to my body. I wanted to go back to be with my father. And I more or less asked the being if I could do that. I was negotiating. I was like, I don't think I can leave him like that. Can I go back? And I can't tell you the length of time, but I did go back, and I was not in that room anymore. When I came to, I was on the living room floor, and the paramedics had all their tools and stuff and gadgets and whatnot, and they were working on me diligently, and they're talking to each other. We got to bring the truck up. This guy's got no BP. Let's go. Get the truck. Get the truck. They're talking about the ambulance. And I'm like, guys, I'm fine. Like, I feel fantastic. I feel better than I've ever felt. And they're like, you're seriously not okay. And I'm like, no, I am. I really am. I feel fantastic. Did you see the light? Did you hear the voice? And they're starting to look at each other, you know, and look at me. And I'm like, okay, I better shut the hell up, because they're going to take me to the wrong hospital and lock me up.
Hey, Ray, quick question, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
When you came to, you initially still had that euphoria, but then that kind of washed away to immense pain. Is that correct?
Yes, that's exactly what happens. The euphoria wears off. And at the moment that it does, intense pain takes over. It feels like a bomb went off inside my body. And I've compared notes with some other people, and they've also experienced this. It's when you're an energetic being and you don't have this pain body, you're not in it. So you feel nothing, but we don't realize how much pain we really have in our body. So let's say I know at one time I broke all my fingers at different times when I was a kid, and you don't really get them fixed. You don't go to the hospital. So they cause a little bit of pain, maybe some arthritis, but we don't really notice it all that much. Our brain says, okay, we're not going to fix these fingers. We're just going to let it be. We might as well ignore the pain. But when you come back to your body, you have to relearn to do that. So everything hurts. Everything you've ever injured that has a little bit of pain that stays with you is now magnified times 10. So it was so painful to come back. And needless to say, I never had that relationship or that emotions that I wanted to have with my dad anyway. So the combination of the two, I just wanted a mulligan. I wanted to go back. I wanted a do-over, you know?
How did the paramedics react? And they must have thought first he's seeing these Kool-Aid sunshine things, and now he's in pain, for more pain than we think he should be in. Was there a reaction to that? Or?
Well, that didn't happen until I got to the hospital. Because it was after I got to the hospital that pain really kicked in. And I was like, oh man, I made the wrong choice here. and I was like, gee, if I get to do this over, I'm not doing this.
I've had a lot of guests on that have had near-death experiences, and one analogy I thought was interesting, and I'm wondering if it would resonate with you. Mm-hmm. He said it was like all his life being a canary in a cage, looking out at the world, and then the cage was open, and he was free, and he was part of everything.
Wow, that's a great way to explain it. When you're one with this light is all things. You feel one with everything. And I came to realize much, much later on that we can do this as humans in our body, but that's going to be 40 years from now, from the time that, let's say 20, that's going to be 30 years later. I'm approaching 50 before I realized how to do this. Now there's yogis that will tell you that they meditate 6 hours a day, X amount of days a week, and they can put themselves in that place where they are one with the universe. I used to think that was a joke. To me, that was funny, yeah, one with everything. Okay, whatever. But now I get it. It really, truly is possible when you leave your physical body, and whether or not you had an NDE or an out-of-body experience, you can become one with all things. You are the wall. You are the floor. You're also you. You're also intertwined with other people and their consciousness. And it's an amazing experience. It's difficult to get there. It takes practice. And these yogis will tell you that they've had to do how many years of meditating to get to that space. But when you do it, whether you experience it one time in your life or 10 times, it's so profound. It's so amazing. But we can do it. We can get there. So yeah, I totally understand the one with everything example.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Yo, do you love Jesus? A theatrical dive into scripture or hearing fascinating stories and testimonies of fellow sojourners? Any of the above? Then you're my kind of people. Or should I say, his kind of people. My name is Fred David Kenny Jr., and I'm the host of Plays on Word Radio. Click the link in the show notes to check out our weekly in-depth look into the Word of God, our journey as we tour and perform, and the fascinating family God continues to introduce us to along the way.
So this was in your 20s, and then there was a period where you just kind of moved out of your family's house and you moved in an apartment, and this stuff didn't go away, but you still kind of denied it. So if you could take us from your 20s to your 30s up until you got married, and also I believe you mentioned on other podcasts, either a guardian angel or an entity saved your life a couple times. You know, you always had this guiding voice that helped to almost be a Sherpa to get you out of trouble.
Yeah, that's very, very true. So immediately thereafter, remember now, I'm a kid who can see energy. I crossed over. I went to the other side. I come back. Okay, so now these energies come back with me. And these energies are the consciousness or the souls, the spirit, whatever word you wish to use, of others who were once alive. And it's almost like they have a direct portal to me now that's been opened as a result of me crossing over and coming back. So when I move out of my home, which is very soon thereafter, the NDE, I get my first place and I'm all excited. This is going to be great. You know, we're going to have parties all the time. My friends are going to come over and blah, blah, blah. And none of that ever happens. Because from the very first day I lived there, that place feels like it's filled with people, but there's no one there. I had a roommate who never lived there because his girlfriend lived in Brooklyn, which was very, very far from that place. And he was never there. And I used to call him all the time and accuse him. I was like, were you here? Did you move this? Did you do that? He's like, Ray, I don't go there anymore. I've never been there. I was like, all right. And the feeling of being in this room, I would see the lines shooting across the room. I would feel vibrations that would push up against my body or even enter my body. If I tried to watch TV, I would click it on, it would go off. I would click it on, it would go off. Anything electrical would just not function the way it should have for me. I must have called the maintenance guy 100 times telling him, you know, there's something wrong with my electricity. This doesn't work. That doesn't work. And he's like, eventually, you know, you're nuts, kid. You know, you got to leave me alone. Do not call again because there is nothing wrong with this place. You know, I don't want to hear from you because I'm not coming. And I was like, you know, okay. And these entities, since I'm not accepting them or I'm not even acknowledging them, I'm holding on as strong as I can to atheism, even though I had the NDE, because I think I denied it. I denied what it really was. Life was easier as an atheist.
Yeah.
So they're pushing and pushing and pushing. And if I cannot sleep, the insomnia that kicks in lasts forever until I start to use obscene amounts of alcohol and drugs. That's the only way I can get sleep. That's the only way I can get relief because they are so persistent. I can't tell anybody about this. I remember telling somebody about the NDE and they told me I was crazy. Wow. I remember as a kid bringing up the energy I saw. I was told I was crazy. everything I've ever said, I'm crazy. So I better just not tell anybody about this too, because I'm crazy. So I'm starting to believe I am crazy. And to make that go away to the best of my ability, alcohol and drugs.
Yeah.
And I developed a tremendous dependency on these, and it started to destroy my life. But in the back of my mind, I'm not afraid to die. And I'm kind of in a very, very depressed place.
You know what sounds weird about that, Ray? It's interesting because usually when I interview people, some of those symptoms not being left alone and going nuts, but it's usually like the demonic depossession, but you're the opposite. It's the angelic possession or trying to get your attention,
Trying to get my attention. Right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And it wasn't meant to be bad, or it wasn't meant to be negative. They're just really trying to, I guess, say, hey, you've seen the other side. Let us show you what we can show you, or
really?
help us. And I'm like, I'm screaming at them. I'm like, you're not real. I know you're not real. Stop messing with my television. You're not real. And, the more that I would say, the more it would happen, and more alcohol and more drugs. And so I moved to the next place, and I'm hoping for a clean slate that, okay, the house was haunted or whatever, right? This is how I start justifying everything. The house is haunted.
Sure.
The NDE was nothing more than my hallucinations from inhaling gas fumes. I'm justifying all of this. I don't want to be crazy, right?
Yeah.
So I move into the second place, and exactly the same thing happens. And so I realize it's not the place that's haunted. It's Ray. Ray's haunted. And I had to start taking a look at this. But I, of course, being young and in my 20s, I go with more alcohol and more drugs. And I'm in my young 20s, and I don't care if I die. So I'm putting myself in terrible situations. Since chaos from birth was my comfort zone, I try to create chaos later in life because that's the way I'm programmed. I think chaos is the way we're supposed to live. I don't really fully understand or embrace love. I don't get that. I'm not comfortable there. But give me chaos, and I can navigate those waters really, really well. And I did. So, there were times where it's very possibly the being that was at the end of the light that was there for me to get me out of a situation where I was about to die. And one of them, which I tell the story in the book, I was in a bar. I was working for some people that were a little shady. One night there's a shootout in the bar, and I hide under the bar, or behind it, I should say. And I don't know how to get out of this situation, because if I so much as stand up, the shooter's going to see me. And I get this overwhelming sensation. I'm going to call it a voice, but it's not exactly a voice, but it's telling me side door, side door, side door. Now I know exactly where the side door is, but if I get up, the shooter will see me. How am I going to get to that door? And again, side door, side door, side door. So finally, I really don't have much of a choice, and I just go with it. And I get out that door, and then there's another corridor. It's about a 40-foot corridor I got to run down to get to the next door, the next side door, which takes me to the outside. It's a fire escape, right? So I make it, I get out that side door, and don't you know, for some strange reason, I parked my car right outside that door that day. I never parked on that side of the building. I had my own parking spot. It was on the other side of the building. I have no idea why I parked there that day. But as soon as I opened the door, my car was right there. And that's not the only time that this being would save my life. There was another story I tell in the book where I manifested a horrible car accident. And keep in mind, we can manifest good things and we can manifest bad things. Whatever it is that you're thinking about and going through in your mind can and will become a reality. And I didn't want to go back to my job. So I kept thinking, what can I do to have a car accident where I don't die, but I'm injured just enough to get a big lump sum of money in a lawsuit, because you could do that back then. I had friends that did it, and I was like, where'd you get all that money? Oh, I had an accident and I sued and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And today you can't. So don't try this at home.
Yeah.
But I did get myself into an accident. There was a car that almost cut me off, and he went back into his lane, and I didn't collide with that car at all. But being the aggressive, chaotic person I had to pull up alongside him and tell him what I thought of him and his bad driving, and called him every name in the book. What I didn't do was pay attention to what was right in front of me, which was traffic at a dead stop on the highway. And I just drove right into the car that was in front of me. The car behind me hit me. The car that hit that car caused me to get hit again. And I was, make it stop, make it stop. All I was saying was, make it stop, please make it stop. And here's the being again saying, get under the dash, under the dash, under the dash.
Wow.
It wasn't a law to wear your seatbelt back then. So I did. I had my hands over my head, and I was kind of scrunched under the dashboard in the front seat of the car, in the driver's seat. And that's where they had to cut me out eventually. And the car just kept getting hit and hit, because another car would hit this one and then it would go into me again. And finally, when it all ends, my car's faced the wrong way on the highway, halfway up on the divider. And that's where I stopped. And I remember the police officer, who was a woman, said, is he with us? And that meant, is he dead? So I knew I was in bad shape. And I remember I tried to like move my hand just a little bit so they would know I was alive, and they would cut me out of there. You know, once again, here's this being looking out for me, protecting me for what? I have no idea. Like, I'm not special. I'm not, I'm nothing. I'm just a guy that doesn't even believe in this stuff. And this being is helping me repeatedly. And even if you go way back, when I was 10 years old, I remember my parents took me to the beach, and I was swimming in the ocean, and the undertow took me so far out that I couldn't get back to shore. And the lifeguard was getting other people out, but not me. He was looking to the other side. I'm waving like, hey man, I'm going down. I'm going down. And I start to panic, which is what happens to most people. And my father's like straight ahead. He's just looking at me, watching me go down. And I'm like, come on, man, get out here. Help me. I'm waving like, what are you doing? Does he not know? And I swim forward, but you can't get anywhere because the undertow is just pushing you out. So it's like you're swimming in the same space. You don't advance, but you don't go back. And this being once again comes and says, calm down, relax. And a feeling of calmness just took over. That was the first thing that happened. I didn't make it happen. It just happened. I became very calm, very relaxed. Swim sideways, swim to shore. Take as long as you need. Take as long as you need. And that's what I did. I swam on an angle, and I eventually made it to shore. And I later learned in an undertow, if you can't get out, that's what you're supposed to do. You swim on an angle, because on an angle, you can make some advancement, and eventually you'll get to shore. It might take you a while, but you'll get there. And I did. And I remember I made it to shore, and I just collapsed. And then all these people came around me. Are you okay? Are you okay? And I was scared of these people now, because I'm only 10 years old, and they're a bunch of adults looking at me and seeing if I need help. That scared me. So I get up and I start running back. There's so many stories. I must have had more than 9 lives, because I've had these things, these events where I should be dead, but I'm not. And one real death where I cross over and come back. So I feel like I can't die if I wanted to.
You're Lazarus.
Yeah, but I don't know what the hell I am, but I'm certainly not able to die.
Wow, you had a really crazy 20s, Ray. That's amazing. Eventually, you literally settled down. I mean, you realized that you had to change your life. You got married, and when you had kids, you realized you had to be around for them. But you still resisted your spiritual awakening. And it really wasn't until you met your second wife, who was really a key enabler to opening your third eye and accepting your spiritual awakening. Can you take us down that path and some of the psychic mentors that she helped introduce you to?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like you said, it wasn't until I had kids that I had a reason for living, and they were my reason. And so I got cleaned up. I went to rehab. I got my degree. I got a great job in New York. I worked my way up the ladder, and the beings were still there, but we kind of had almost like an agreement. You stay on your side, I stay on my side, and we'll all just get along. And that lasted for a very long time. I wound up getting divorced, I think, in the third year of marriage to the mother of my children, unfortunately. But then what happens is later on in life, I decide, well, I'm going to date again. And I am looking on websites because that's what we do now. We go to a website to, find somebody, find a match. And when you go to these sites, they'll show you 4 or 5 ladies in your area to try to entice you to take out your credit card and join. So I did. When I saw this one woman, and I said, oh my God, there she is. That is my wife right there. And I just knew it. I knew it was her. So I joined the site. I send one email to her and I tell her this. I'm sending one email to you and you only. I joined the site because of you and you only, because you're my wife and you just don't know that yet.
So Ray, I got to interject real quickly if you don't mind. The only other person I know that has said that, I've heard that kind of similar story, is my dad. My dad, when he first saw my mom, it was at a dance, and he went up to her and said, I'm your partner. And she thought it was just for the dance, but he meant for life. So it's funny. When you said this story, I thought of my dad. So I think that's awesome. So sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to share the only other person that happened to was my father. So
it is true. We are married. We're married today. We live in this house, and it was a happily ever after story. Go figure for me. But it was when we first started dating that things start to get crazy again. In fact, we just had started to get serious, and the question arises, so what are your spiritual beliefs? Like, in other words, do you follow a religion, or are you this, or are you that? And I said, I don't know. I really don't know what I am. I don't know. I threw the question back to her, and she kind of answered with an, I don't know also. Like, I was raised Christian, but. And she says, now a couple months later, she says, for your birthday, I'm going to get you a spiritual clearing. And I said, okay. So it's like a massage, like I'm going to get a massage. She goes, no, stop. And I said, well, what? She goes, you don't even have to be in the room. And I'm like, oh, great. This sounds wonderful. Okay. So what do I do? Just wait for the woman to call you. She'll tell you she's going to do it. It's a distance healing. She's going to clear your chakras. You're going to have a direct line to the afterlife. And I'm like, oh, this is just absolutely wonderful. Cake? Will we have cake after? Yes, we'll have cake. Excellent. So I don't believe in this. I don't know what this is. It's not for me. It's too complicated. I understand my job. I'm good at my job. I that's what I do. I work. And anything outside of that is unknown territory. And so that I'm scared of. I can't control it. But nonetheless, she does this, and the woman calls, and I'm at my job. I'm at work, and I answer the phone, and she said, I'm going to start now. I said, okay, great. She said, don't make any life-changing decisions in the next 48 hours. I said, okay. And don't have any important appointments either. I said, okay. Talk soon. Bye. Click. She had mentioned that I might feel off afterwards. And it was 2 hours later, maybe. And she called me back. I'm not sure of the exact amount of time, but she called me back and she said, okay, I'm finished, and proceeded to tell me next 48 hours, just, don't do too much and blah, 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 blah. And I said, okay, I'm still thinking about my cake. And we hang up the phone, and it's really within minutes that all of a sudden I begin to feel wobbly, like my equilibrium is off, almost like I had too much to drink, and I'm having a hard time navigating to the bathroom. Something is really happening. I just don't know what it is again. But it took me back to that feeling of being in the closet as a kid. That's the way it felt. Energy's pushing and pushing again. It was no longer you're on your side of the room and I'm on my side of the room. I remember I went home and I said, listen, I got a headache. I got to take the day off. It was a Friday. I left. I went home, and I had some idle time on my hands, and this is what happens when I have idle time now, after this. I see this man, and this is the first time that I've ever seen energy in the form of a human. I have not seen any of these energy beings that I've seen. They've never looked human. This is the first one that does. And he says, I effed up. I made a mistake. You can help her. I cannot. And it's this big stocky guy. He's got beard and mustache, thick black hair. And I have never seen him before in my entire life. I don't know who he is. I don't know who this message is for. I don't even understand that it is a message. I think I'm really losing my mind for real now. And he comes back, I would say on Friday, maybe 4 or 5 times. On Saturday, he came every hour on the hour. I'm not 100% certain about the time, but, it felt like every hour. And on Sunday, it felt like it was every 10 minutes. And I can't function anymore. I can't drive. I can't have a conversation with anyone. I can't do the normal things that I would do because he's so persistent. And I remember the breaking point was when I was in a store and I was paying for my stuff. And I don't know what I did because I'm out of it. Maybe I froze. Maybe I said something. I don't know. But the lady behind the counter says to me, "Sir, are you okay?" And I said, "Absolutely not. No, I am not." And I took my credit card back and I went to the car and I sat in the car and I said, "This is it. This is the end. I have to prepare for what's coming next. I'm insane. I have to take care of my kids. I got to make sure my will is done. I have to make sure I have a DNR because I want to make sure I go back to that light. I got to call my brother. I got to make sure he's got all this paperwork because I've done it already. And I need to know that my kids are going to be taken care of." That's the only thing I'm thinking right now. I've completely lost my mind. Now I'm sober, so I can't have a drink. I can't do anything to suppress this or make it go away. He's persistent. He's right in my face. Now, if all of this isn't enough, the woman that I now have to tell I'm crazy by trade, she is a doctor of psychology and a doctor of neuropsychology. I'm going to tell her this and she's going to run for the hills. But I suppose that has to happen anyway because I need help and maybe she can point me in the right direction, get me to the right doctor, get me the right help that I need. And I just wanted her to know how I felt about her, and it was heartbreaking. I knew it was the end of my life. I knew that, I felt like that was it. This is it. I got to prepare. So I proceed to tell her what I'm seeing. And I see this guy and he comes to me. I effed up. I made a mistake. You can help her. I cannot. This is what he says. It looks like a movie screen in my mind and it opens up and he's still there and he won't leave. And I told her what he looked like. And she said, "I don't get the reaction I think I'm going to get." She doesn't flinch. She says, "Oh my God, you can speak to my dad." And I was like, "What?" She goes, "My dad died a long time ago. I've seen mediums and he comes through exactly the way you're saying it." Wow. And I said, "What the hell is a medium? I don't understand what that is. Nor am I going to believe it anyway when she does tell me." And she proceeds to explain how she's seen mediums before and he comes through. But I said, wait, time out. I saw his picture. I saw that picture that you have in your living room on the mantle. I said, it doesn't look like him. This guy, let me explain again. He's got a beard, a mustache, thick black hair. He's a husky guy. He's a big dude. And she's like, "That is such an old picture." She goes, "Let me show you the way he looked before he died." And he died at the age of about 50. So she shows me the photo. And I said, "Oh my God, you know that guy?" She said, "That's my dad, silly." And I said, "Well, get him out of my friggin' head." Why is he there? I didn't know what to do in that moment. My heart just sank into my stomach. And so if I'm not crazy, am I crazy? What is a medium? What does all this stuff mean? And I'm starting to piece things together from my past. And she says, "Listen, relax. there's a medium coming to town and she is very, very popular. She's very good at what she does. She travels the country. She'll be in our area soon. I'll make 2 appointments, one for you, one for me. And you can just sit with her and explain what happens to you because you're just a medium and you don't know it. And I was like, okay, I'm along for the ride. Let's do it. So I sit with the woman and I go in first because if I didn't go in first, I would have ran. I would have took off. I'm petrified of both answers, right? Whether I'm crazy or whether I'm a medium, I'm scared to get either answer. Oh. I don't know which one I actually want to be right. So I sit with her and I say, hi, my name's Ray. And she goes, oh, you're that Ray. Have a seat, Ray. She says, tell me what's going on, Ray. And I said, I'm crazy. I'm losing my mind. She says, tell me more. What happens? And I explained to her about the vibrations and the lines across the room and the movie screen that opens up in my mind. And she says, stop. She goes, so you're a medium? And I'm like, oh my God, this is crazy. She's like, that's the way we see it, Ray. That's what happens. And I sat with her for well over an hour and we just kind of talked through all the different types of premonitions that I was getting because some were mediumship, some were considered psychic, some were this, some were that. And she was explaining to me what each thing was. And I felt good at the end of the conversation, but I also felt like, well, now what? What are my responsibilities? What am I supposed to do with this? What's my next move? And she really didn't answer any of those questions. And I wanted to exchange numbers. And she's like, oh, I'm out of business cards. I'll find you. Don't worry. And I was like, oh, I was bummed out. She didn't really want to talk to me anymore. Then my wife goes in and she comes out all happy. And she's like, aren't you excited? Aren't you excited? And I'm like, what do you mean? Well, she's taking you on as a mentee. She's going to be your mentor for the first year. And I was like, she didn't say anything like that. She didn't want to give me her phone number. And she's like, oh, stop. She goes, she doesn't take students anymore, but she's taking you. And I was like, okay, I think. Okay. And she did. And it was a year that she was with me and literally saved my life because I don't know what I would have done. Probably returned to drugs, alcohol. I don't know. I really don't know. But she taught me how to control it, how to analyze it, how to understand it, because in her life, her parents had her institutionalized for being schizophrenic. So she knew exactly where I was coming from and she could relate 100%.
This is a good segue to almost your second book because you've taken us through your transition, which really was a stubborn transition, Ray. You sound like a great guy, but boy, you sound like you really needed the guiding hand, the several guiding hands that you came across, thankfully, to get you here. Mm-hmm. You wrote your second book, You Are Still Alive, Now Act Like It. It sounds like you realized what you needed to do was to document your experience and to use it as almost like a case study to help people find their own innate capabilities to open their consciousness up to an awakening. Is that accurate?
100%. That's exactly where that book ends. And the new book begins as I get my second mentor. The way I met him was pretty crazy. It was the next birthday. And something always happens on my birthday that literally changes the direction of our lives. And my wife says, what do you want to do for your birthday? I said, let's go away to like a cabin in the woods and just be around nature and chill. And that's all I want to do. And she said, okay. So we do that. And we're meditating while we're there. And I'm a big meditator now. And she is too. So when we're there, she took out this picture that was drawn for her. And she showed it to me. She goes, I've been looking for this for a long time and I just finally found it. And she shows me the picture. I said, oh my God, that's your dad. And she's like, yeah, I know. And I was like, no. But what you don't know is that's the way I see him in my mind. Like when he talks to me, that's what he looks like. That shirt, everything about this picture is exactly the way I see him. I said, who drew it? And she said, well, one of the mediums is a spirit artist that I went to and he can draw what he sees. And I wish I had that ability. So, I'm so interested in finding out who this man is and more about him. And I said, let's look him up. And we take out the laptop and I type in his name and his website comes up. And right on his front page of the website, it says, now accepting applications for a 2-year mentorship program with Medium Joe. And I was like, wow. And it said the deadline to enter, or the deadline to get your app in, was February 15th. That's my birthday. That's my birthday. That's the deadline. So she's like, are you going to fill it out? I said, are you kidding me? I'm filling it out right now. Now I'm believing this is universal intervention. This is a divine message. I've got to meet this man. And I submit my application, but it's not that simple. The application is followed by another application of essay questions and another one after that, and then an interview, and then another one after that. And it's a combination of events that keeps going on and on and on. And I never heard from him. So I just figured I didn't get it. And now I'm going back to doubting myself. I'm not real. This is a one-off. I got lucky, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. I know I'm stubborn. And I'm all the way back to that point. And I call his assistant just to verify that I didn't get it. And she says, no. He hasn't decided yet because there are hundreds of applicants. And I said, hundreds of applicants? Okay. All right. That's cool. And I waited. But now I'm thinking hundreds of applicants, right? And this is a several $1,000 program because it's multiple years that you have to pay to be in it. Hundreds times thousands is one heck of a payday. He could have accepted everybody, but the integrity of this man, this is what shows you or me that I could trust him with anything. He chose 11 people and I was the 11th. And I was like, wow, I was blown away by that. He could have said, oh yeah, you're all real. I'm taking you all. But if he couldn't prove that, it doesn't mean the others weren't real. It just simply means that he couldn't get to the place he needed to get to feel that they were real enough to be in the program. And I was blown away by that. Just blown away by that. And I'm so grateful to be considered one of his mentees. I still am today. It's not, I'm with him 4 years now. And I told him, I'm never leaving you. So yeah, I don't care. You could give me the certificate. Don't. I'm with you for life, pal. So, and maybe even thereafter. And he laughs because I just have so much respect for this man. And he started teaching me so much more than mediumship. I mean, he taught me how to manifest things and how to do other things. And it starts to lead me down a path of learning everything that I can possibly learn about spiritualism, but also about science, because he had a way of bringing science into the picture. And I wanted to take that to the next level because I'm the eternal skeptic. It took 40 years for me to believe in this stuff. So I want to know, what is the science? And I went back to college for metaphysics, and I'm about to get my PhD in metaphysics, which is crazy. I can't even wrap my head around the fact that I went through college at all. I mean, I'm not, Mr. College. Not many people in my family made it to college at all. And I'm reading voraciously Eckhart Tolle, Joe Dispenza, Deepak Chopra, you name it. I'm reading it on the spiritual side. And then on the other side, I'm also studying Einstein and Tesla and Niels Bohr and Hubble and on and on and on and on. So I'm studying physics and I'm studying the spiritual side, and I'm in college for metaphysics. And this is enabling me to put things together that make sense from a scientific standpoint, but that are also magical, like the law of attraction. Everyone has heard about the law of attraction, but I can actually tell you how that works. It's all frequencies. We have a limitless amount of frequencies out there in the universe. And when you think of something and you put it into a picture, you send it out in a vibration. And that vibration is on a frequency, and it looks for a like vibration to attach itself to. It's that simple. It's the same way our cell phones work. If I pick up my phone and I dial your phone number, you ring because my phone adjusts to your frequency, and then we can transmit information back to one another. It's the same thing. So when I started to learn the scientific principles behind the spiritual laws and principles, I was like, this is something big. And that is the second book. And that was what I was writing all the way up until I got to the end, where I had my own ego fracture. Dare I say dissolution? I don't like to use the term dissolution because you always have somewhat of an ego. It never really goes away completely. I'm using the term ego. I mean the egoic mind, the way Eckhart Tolle would speak of it, not egotistical. That's not what we're talking about.
Yeah.
So when you fracture your ego, what that means is you don't derive your information from your subconscious and make your future decisions based on your past. You now look to a new source to find your information for the future, and that's your awareness. And your awareness is at the very top of your conscious mind, as Eckhart Tolle would say, because your awareness gives you the ability that you are aware that you're having an emotion, or you're aware that you're having a thought. And if you're aware that you're having either one of those, guess what? You can change them. You don't have to think that. You don't have to associate it with that emotion. You can change them. And when I had this break, it was when I was driving in my car, and it was a very expensive car because back then I thought that was a really big deal. I was supposed to have that. It was like a symbol or some crap. And I saved a lot of money to buy it. And I was driving, and it was snowing, and it was started to become a blizzard, and I couldn't see, and I ran right into a deer. And I wrecked the car.
It's always a deer, it's always like in any movie you're in, it's a deer. Yeah, it's always.
I hadn't even seen deers until I moved up here with my wife. Where I used to live, we didn't have deer. We didn't have trees. So yeah, I hit a deer. And normally, your adrenaline surges when you have an accident, and the old Ray would have been just livid with the situation. But none of that happened. There was no adrenaline surge. There was absolutely nothing. It was a feeling of, I can't go back in time. I can't change any of this. So let me go to my awareness and be who I want to be. And I had no emotion other than I felt bad for the deer. That was it. Compassion. Who am I? I said to myself, I don't even recognize myself anymore. I know it's a good thing, but I don't recognize myself.
Ray, when you're writing this second book, did you write it yourself, or was it like, were you getting downloads from?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, that is great. I kid around. I say I probably wrote 20% of the book, and the rest was written from upstairs, my guides, because, you get these downloads as you are writing and you're in that mode. But I did a ton of research because before anything goes into the book, I have to be able to replicate it multiple times. I have to be able to find the scientific principle behind it, and I have to thoroughly understand what the law is, or what the universal principles are. And then I put my story in there with the science, and you can recreate it based upon what I did, because I'm not doing brain surgery. I'm not doing anything that anyone else can't do once you learn how to do it. And once you accept it as being real, which was the toughest part for me, was that acceptance. So I think the science helps people with the acceptance. And then when you start to utilize them, and now I coach people in how to do this, and I've seen so much success with my people. They come back to me and they're like, oh my God, this has changed, and that has changed, and this has changed. And I've been in therapy for years. And even my own wife, who's a doctor of psychology, she's a pediatric psychologist and neuropsychologist, and she works with kids who have learning disabilities. She gives me the adults. She's like, you're getting results faster. Take them. You get the adults. I'll take the kids. And that's what we do.
Wow.
Because there's so much in here, that there's so much in this world, in this universe, that we are not utilizing. We don't see it because we can't see it, but somebody has to tell you that it's there so that you can experiment with it, so you can try it. The law of attraction is very real. You are co-creator of this universe. And everybody told us that. Jesus told you, you're a part of God. God's a part of you, right? Well, if that's factual, then God is your partner. And if you need something, tell him you need it. Otherwise, you're not going to get it.
That was my last question for you, was spiritually, who are you now? What's your belief? A lot of people believe in something that's God, but they don't know if it's God, it's a source or whatever. What is your personal journey led you on for your obviously you believe in the afterlife, but what is your belief like with religion and science? Are they connected?
I think that religion and science and spirituality can get along and play nice in the sandbox together, but they one side's got to be willing to hear the other. Actually, they both have to be willing to hear the other side. I do believe in an entity called the universal collective consciousness that we are all connected to directly. You can call that God. You can call that the universe. You can use any word you wish, but a part of that energetic entity is you. And a part of it is the next person, and a part of it is the next person. And we're all connected to that source. And that source is the source of everything. It's the source of creation. And once you tap into that, oh my God, it's limitless what you can do. And my mentor said, Ray, you fought and fought and fought for everything you have. What if I told you could just stand still and just have it come to you?
Well, that's a good, wow.
Like,
yeah.
That's sounds good to me. Thumbs up. I'm in.
Yeah, absolutely. You've been a fighter, and it taught you to be a pacifist and just to accept it, to let your story unfold, Ray. It sounds like,
I had to, at some point, just let it unfold and accept it for what it is. You surrender to what is, which is another concept in the book. Surrendering at certain times is one of the greatest gifts we can give ourselves, because what is the point of dwelling on something that maybe somebody said to you 2 days ago that's upsetting you? It's not helping you. Right? You're giving that person so much power and control over you because you're still angry about something from 2 days ago. And you don't deserve that. That person doesn't deserve to have that much power over you. Just allow it to be. Surrender to what is and stay in the present moment, because in the present moment, no one's saying anything bad to you. No one's doing anything bad to you. Just stay right there. And you'll be a happier person because you're not allowing what happened yesterday to affect you.
Well, that's a great place to end, I think, Ray. I mean, I think I would like to end with one last thing. You telling our listeners your website and the best way to get a hold of you, and what would be the perfect one or two type of people that should reach out to you?
Well, first, let me say I have people from all walks of life and all ages. I help college kids, I help adults, and everybody in between. To reach me, RayCatania.com is my website, and you can contact me through there. You can go to the coaching or learn more about the books.
Could you spell it, Ray, if you don't mind? Just because,
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I'll have it in the show notes too.
Yeah, of course. It's Ray Catania. So RayCatania.com. RayCatania.com. I put updates of whatever's coming up. Sometimes we do some online classes and fun stuff. So definitely just subscribe, and I'll keep you posted on what's happening. Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to say that. I appreciate that, Bob.
No, I'm happy to do it, Ray. You obviously have your experiences, you've chronicled them, and you're here to help others, which is great. So I appreciate your books, and I want to make them available to everybody. And I appreciate you. I don't think I've said wow so much in an interview in a while. Just like, wow. I think I have to edit some of those out. But thank you so much, Ray, for your time. I'd love to have you back if you ever write another book.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you so much. This was wonderful. I enjoyed this very much. Thank you.
You've been listening to the Afraid of Nothing podcast. Please subscribe and like us on Facebook. Until next time, stay scared.
Hey, you're still here? Great. Then why not listen to another episode? Visit AfraidOfNothingPodcast.com to peruse all the shows. That's AfraidOfNothingPodcast.com. And while you're there, click the coffee cup icon to buy me a coffee and leave a review. I'll give you a shout out in an upcoming episode, and the world will know how swell you are.